Was it now?
Good morning to the members of the media. I do apologize for the late start in today's press conference. I would like to welcome you to the Office of the Leader of the Opposition press conference for May 25th, 2022. Today with me from my right, the panel will be none other than Shadow Minister of Home Affairs, Ms. Gita Chandan Edmond, Member of Parliament. To her right, the leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the opposition, Mr. Aubrey Norton, Member of Parliament, and to his right, Shadow Minister of Local Government, none other than Mr. Ganesh Maipal, Member of Parliament. Thank you for joining us today. Today's press statement will be read by the leader of the opposition, Mr. Aubrey Norton. We will go straight in.
Good morning, and thank you. PPP's incompetence, corruption, and divisiveness are manifest in Region 6. The PPP regime does not practice one Guyana. Visits to communities across Guyana reveal that the PPP is divisive, incompetent, and corrupt. On Wednesday and Thursday, 18th and 19th May 2022, an outreach was held in Region 6 Quarantine Berbice. As we visited villages in Region 6, it was evident that the PPP is self-serving, vindictive, and continues to marginalize communities perceived to be supportive of the coalition. The APNU AFC visits to Zambia in the Blackbush Polder area, Eliza Mary, popularly known as Little Africa in Karivaton, and Bushlot under quarantine have revealed the true nature of the People's Progressive Party. Zambia Blackbush Polder. It was apparent that despite Zambia being a part of Blackbush Polder, it was apparent that despite Zambia being a part of the Blackbush Polder area, the people are treated as second-class citizens. Infrastructural and other development works are evident in all other areas of Blackbush Polder, namely Les Beholden, Maibikuri, Johanna, and Yakasari, but none in Zambia, where most of the residents are of African descent and seen as coalition supporters. This approach of discriminating against communities is unfortunate and must come to an end and be condemned by all. The residents complain of the high level of unemployment, lack of proper infrastructural work within the area, no roads, poor drainage, no water, and no functioning playground for the children within the community. They further noted that the playfield that was started under coalition government and should have been completed by the end of 2020 is not completed. And on the assumption of the office of the PPP administration, no further work was done. The residents also complain that with the high cost of living, there are still very little or no job opportunities. Even in cases of students performing exceptionally well at the CSEC examination, there are no opportunities for them to progress. A young person who seeks any form of development is forced to leave the community, thus depriving the community of its best and brightest. The People's National Congress Reform calls for an urgent review of the treatment of residents of Zambia and demand that at minimum they should be afforded the same infrastructure development and social services as the other communities within Blackbush Polder. This total regard for people shown by the PPP to the residents of Zambia must stop immediately. As citizens of Guyana, all are entitled to benefit from our newfound wealth. Little Africa. In another perceived coalition support area, the PPP continues to victimize and discriminate against the residents of Eliza Mary, which is popularly known as Little Africa, as no services are provided to the community by the PPP-controlled Corriverton Town Council. It is apparent as you walk into the community, the PPP is shameless and unconcerned about the state of that community. Little Africa is deprived of proper roads, drainage, street lights, and there is no system for garbage collection. These are some of the basic necessities that are absent from this community, which has been in existence for more than 3 decades. Also of concern to the residents is that they are unable to receive phone lines, since the telephone company explained that the community is not regularized. However, in communities perceived to be PPP strongholds that are not regularized, there is access to similar services. Clearly, this community experiences PPP discrimination. It is ridiculous for the PPP to be boasting at Guyana's newfound wealth, and communities are being deprived of basic services. The call is being made for the PPP Ali regime to treat all Guyanese and their communities as equals. As if having some amount of respect for the living was of no concern, it is even worse with the dead. The town council has started allowing people to dump garbage at the entrance of the community's only burial ground. No garbage collection is done within the community. There is literally no road to the burial ground for people to use to bury their dead. The youths of the community bemoan the fact that they are deprived of jobs, while at the same time they are compelled to live at a very high cost of living. Many young people from the area are of the view that once they are from Little Africa, they are deprived of employment. This is so even though the second vice president waves an offer of thousands of temporary jobs as he travels and visits communities to spread his usual lies. The second vice president needs to be reminded that our people do not have temporary needs. Children do not have a temporary need for food and shelter. It is a joke for an oil-rich country to be offering its young people temporary jobs. It is a clear manifestation of the lack of vision and the incompetence of the PPP regime and its desire to engage in projects that allow them, their friends and family to get rich through corruption. Clearly, our people are not benefiting from our newfound wealth, thanks to PPP incompetence and corruption. The town council has been largely ignoring the representation made by the elected representatives of the people, especially the APNU AFC councillors. The people complain that the PPP mayor disregards their representation and have been making his own determinations about the needs and resources to be provided to the community. Unfortunately, this means no resources or services are provided to the community. The residents of Little Africa complain of being fed up with being treated worse than animals in the country of their birth and demand an end to this treatment as second-class citizens, and urge the Town Council of Corriverton and the PPP to respect the residents by providing them with the services that should be given to every community as mandated by the laws of Guyana. The PPP administration is placed on notice that we are aware of their actions of victimization and discrimination and will continue to take them to task so as to ensure that Guyana returns to good governance. We are convinced that good governance will only truly prevail with the coalition returning to government. We will continue to engage and mobilize the people of East Berbice Quarantine Region 6 and Guyana generally to ensure that this happens at the earliest possible time. Bush Lot. The residents of Bush Lot Quarantine, which is primarily a farming community, have not been spared the ill effects of PPP misrule. Like all other communities, the lack of proper drainage is a major concern. This is more so since the community is a farming community. In addition, parents complain that when it rains, the entire area is flooded and they have difficulties taking their children to school. Residents are requesting that government should drain the area properly and build up the alleyways so as to permit easy access in very sanitary conditions, since at present the area is in a deplorable state. Farmers in the community cited discrimination in the disbursement of COVID cash grant and the farmers cash grant for flood relief, despite many farmers in the area saying they saw their names on the list but never received any cash. They said there was obvious corruption and discrimination in the distribution process. The farmers were very critical of the minister and the Ministry of Agriculture. They contend that they do not see the agricultural extension workers and therefore they do not receive technical assistance. The farmers are demanding that extension workers should visit to help them with their crops and livestock. A grandmother lamented the fact that she cannot afford the treatment for her grandchild who has kidney problems. She said it is very difficult and costly for her to take the child to Georgetown for treatment and is concerned that the government closed the dialysis services which the people of the quarantine access in New Amsterdam under the coalition government. It is the view of persons in the area that the present government neglects of the dialysis service is impacting kidney patients negatively. The residents of Rice Mill Road in Bush Lot stated that many of them have to access their homes through the yards of other residents, since the government is only promising but not delivering on their promise to build a road to give them access to their properties. They showed the visiting team the deplorable state of the dam, which is made worse by a PPP bigwig who destroyed the road and tells them that he has connections and no one can do him anything. The residents are demanding an end to this abuse of power. Clearly, when one looks at the treatment given to the residents in Bush Lot by the PPP regime, it is a case of corruption, incompetence, and a lack of care for poor people. PPP continues to attack freedom of expression. On the eve of the nation's 56th independent anniversary, it is unfortunate that we have to highlight the acts of the PPP that continue to sour the mood of the country and deepen the hopelessness of our people. Last week, the country's cultural and performance industry was informed that the government had increased the cost to rent the National Culture Center by, in some cases, as much as 600%. This is unacceptable and will impact negatively on the arts. Should this not change, the arts will become another exclusive domain of the elites in our society. Monday, the Forbes Burnham Foundation, a non-governmental organization committed to the commemoration and the memorialization of the life of the leader Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, who led Guyana to independence, was unceremoniously informed by the National Library that permission to mount its independence commemorative exhibition in the National Library was being revoked. One does not have to look hard to see the devious hand of the PPP government behind this bad-minded decision. On this matter, notice taken of a recent Demerara Waves report quoting a high-level government official as saying that should persons wish to mount an exhibition in a state-owned facility such as the National Library, the contents of that exhibition has to first be factually verified. If this report is true, and we believe it is, and if this position represents the view of the government, then we totally reject it. This policy is clearly a blatant attempt at censorship and suppression of freedom of expression. Who have the Guyanese people authorized to undertake this verification exercise? And what is to stop this ridiculousness from extending to the National Park, the National Culture Center, and the National Stadium? We can only hope that the government official quoted by Demerara Waves was talking out of turn. The Forbes Burnham Foundation must be applauded for not being daunted. We are told that it has relocated its independent commemorative exhibition to Main Street Avenue, west of the National Library, from May 24th to May 28, 2022. We invite the public to go view the exhibition. We share its commitment to bringing authentic pictorial depictions of the events surrounding the 1966 attainment of independence. Flood across the country. More preparations needed. The PNCR notes with concern the reports of severe flooding in several regions of Guyana, including regions 5 and 9. We urge residents in flood-prone areas to take every precautionary and preparatory measure to reduce inconvenience and loss of property. At the same time, we put the government on notice that natural disaster management plan must focus on preemptive, preparatory, and preventive measures. While heavy rainfall and river overtopping make some flooding in Guyana inevitable, a national flood response plan must not be reduced to PPP officials touring flood-hit areas to share out garden tools and DPI camera crew in tow. Preemptive and preparatory measures must include, for example, the clearing of canals, the servicing of drainage pumps and cokers, and ensuring the Civil Defense Commission is proactive and not only involved in rescue and relief missions. Government's side and no-show at Public Accounts Committee. On Wednesday, April 13, 2022, a motion was passed in the National Assembly of Guyana changing the quorum of the Public Accounts Committee. Before the passage of this motion, a quorum was any 3 members of the committee, and this existed since 1963. A quorum now requires 5 members, 2 representing the government, 2 representing the opposition, and the chairperson. This was imposed on the Public Accounts Committee by the PPP majority in Parliament. During the debates, the opposition argued that the motion is an attempt by the government to undermine transparency and accountability to the people. The government denied this and mounted that they will never seek to stymie the work of the Public Accounts Committee. We can now report that at the statutory meeting of Monday, May 23, 2022, the government side was a no-show for the Public Accounts Committee meeting. The clerk of the PAC informed the opposition members who were all present that the government side has asked to be excused due to the flooding in Region 9. Also present for the meeting were the Finance Secretary, Accountant General, and the Attorney General's representative, the Auditor General's representative, and the agencies to be examined: Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development and Region 9. The meeting could not have been held because of the new PPP imposed definition of quorum. We anticipate that this will be the first of such government maneuvers to thwart the work of the PAC, so that the PAC will not be able to examine the accounts of 2020 and 2021 in just the PPP accounts. Guyanese should not be surprised that the PPP has no interest in advancing transparency and accountability. Its disdain for the people is palpable. I thank you.
Thank you. Member of the opposition. At this time, the floor is open for questions from the member of the media. You can do so by the raise of hand.
I hear you.
Yes, we should be independent.
In one word, you said.
Any questions?
Shanika, we can't hear you.
One moment.
I hear
The
now.
audio. I can hear Aubrey in the background.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, yes.
Very well. All right. So I just said that the floor is now open for questions, and you can do as is customary by the raised of hands, and you state your media house and name. Any questions on the press statement? Okay, Mr. Adam Harris. Mr.
Yeah.
Yes,
sorry,
you can go ahead.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. Currently, you spoke a mouthful about your fan out or meet the people or community tour between May 18th and May 19th on the quarantine. And you spoke of what appears to be a blatant segregation of communities that appear to be supportive of your party. Apart from the visual, the things you see, the bad roads, the bad streets, and all of that, when you spoke to some of the people, did you get that very impression, sir?
Well, I don't know if you saw the live stream, but the people in Blackbush, at Zambia, and at Little Africa spoke out and actually took us on a tour and showed us the state of affairs, and they contend that the government neglects them and discriminates against them. I can tell you, one person actually told us that in applying for a job, you should find another address, because once you put Elijah, Mary, or Little Africa, you are not likely to get the job. So they themselves were speaking out. There was one young woman who actually spoke on camera bemoaning the situation that exists. So what we said, in fact, is a reflection of what the people in the communities are saying. I had undertaken, when I was running to become leader first of the PNC, and then when I became leader of the opposition, that we will visit communities and represent them. And this is what, in essence, we are doing. We are going to these communities, meet the people, regardless of how they voted. And as you would see, we visited Bush Lot, which is perceived to be a PPP stronghold, and the complaints were many. For instance, we didn't put in it, the citizens demand a bridge to be able to get their livestock and all that they want into the community. We were just selective, but the complaints were many, and it's a reflection of what people were saying. And we have video to back it.
Brings me to the next issue then. We signed the Human Rights Charter, and in this charter there is talk of no discrimination and all the kind of thing. Obviously, by sitting and talking, you're not going to get no change. The government will continue to behave as it is. Is there anything you can do? Perhaps approach the courts, perhaps lobby internationally and present this case to see if you can force a change.
All right. All the things you said we can do. The question is whether the government will respond. Now, as opposition, we have a responsibility to educate people, to expose wrongdoing, and to agitate. We are in the phase of educating. We are in the phase of exposing wrongdoings. And like I said before, agitation has to become a critical part of the work. And as we move around, for instance, in one of the communities, people said they are ready and willing to take on the government on the issue. We will do the organization, we will do the work. And we intend to write the international organizations. We intend to bring a lot of it to the attention of the diplomatic corps here. And we intend to mobilize and organize people to deal with the PPP's disrespect for our people.
Thank you. Any other questions on the press statement? Any other questions, whether in or outside of the press statement at this time? Mr. Adam.
Yeah, I know. If my colleagues don't want to ask question, this temporary job offer, perhaps some member of parliament can tell me, is that going to be funded out of budgetary allocation? Was there a budgetary vote for such a thing as temporary job offer? I don't know. And I got another question after that.
Okay. Go ahead.
What I know is that there is an allocation that caters for wages and salaries and employment cost, and this is 6141. That's the line item number under the Ministry of Finance, and it caters for new recruits and it caters for employment cost. And that is also the line item where public servants, teachers, doctors and nurses are catered for in terms of if there will be any increases in their wages and salary. And one will assume that there is where the money will come from. But the way in which this administration has been operating, it will be difficult for me to conclude that there is where the money will be coming from. What we will do at the level of the parliament is to ask the question as to where is it that the finance is coming from to pay for these temporary jobs, and more so we can also request of the Auditor General to audit the finances to ascertain if it indeed came from that line item. The PPP cannot be trusted in terms of the information they provide, and that is why we have to ensure that we exhaust all the options available to verify whatever they say to us at Parliament and the nation at large.
It is also a manifestation of an ad hoc response to the realities on the ground. clearly it's a manifestation of the incompetence of the government. For instance, it is reported in the press that the second vice president went to Essequibo and he increased the number. It is obvious that this clearly is no plan. You go out there and you just increase the numbers. And then you have this question of which regions are you putting it? What are the criteria being used to determine which region it will go to? And then if it is coming from the money allocated for public servants, does that mean there will be less in terms of increase of wages and salaries to public servants? We are dealing with a government that is steep in PR. But when you go beyond that, you will recognize that there is no depth. Inflation is facing us. What one expects is that there will be proper measures to deal with inflation. But the government seems to be doing the very thing that creates inflation, throwing resources in without not developing the productive sector, etc. So I think the government is on a course of self-destruction. The government clearly does not have an economic plan for the development of this country. And as oil resources come, we will see that there will be need for a proper plan to deal with inflation. There is need for structured development. There is need for a program in the direction of industrialization, etc. And what we are seeing is not that kind of planning and that kind of organization. What we're seeing is a politician who believes that just throwing money at people will keep him in power and allow him the level of corruption that they are used to. So I think what they're doing will end up not solving the problems and wasting a lot of money. What our people need, they need a structured approach to creating small businesses, a structured approach to creating employment, especially in the productive sector, so that one can see the expansion and development of the economy and not just the throwing of money behind these harum-scarum activities that seem to come out of the head of a second vice president who clearly has no interest in the orderly development of Guyana.
And if I may add to that also, what worries us at the level of the National Assembly is the fact that there are a number of vacancies that exist within the public sector. The public service sector, a number of vacancies exist within regions, departments, and ministries. And we have not seen any study, or we have not seen any paperwork or any demand for these large numbers of temporary jobs that the second vice president speak of. Now let me be clear, we are not against young people or anyone earning a living. We are not against them getting the opportunity to work, nor are we against them developing themselves. But we do have a public service that requires the attention so that it can provide a service to the ordinary Guyanese. And there should be equally the focus on the public service in terms of filling those vacancies that are causing the ministries, departments, and other agencies not to function effectively. We want the public service to function effectively so that a proper service can be delivered to the ordinary citizens of this country that is established in law. And I want to also use this opportunity to say to the installed regime that they need to provide this nation with the type of jobs that they are giving out in terms of these temporary jobs, the monies that these workers will be paid, and at what rate they will be paid, what is the working hours, and all of that needs to be known. We cannot be treating our society in a manner where we don't know these things, and you have persons who are committed and dedicated to the Guyanese people for their full 8-hour span and considered permanent staff members, and they may not be getting the right compensation as perhaps the temporary workers. So that is one major concern of us. Also, what will be the salary increase for the public servants from this year's budget? You will recall, Adam and other members of the media, that in the 2020 budget there was a $6 billion allocation for wages and salaries under 6141 at Ministry of Finance, but public servants were not given a single dollar in terms of their salary increases for 2020. In 2021, we had an increase to $10 billion within that same line item, and public servants were given a 7% increase across the board. And this is 2022. There is also a large allocation there for salary increases, wages and salaries and recruits, but we don't know what is this whole aspect of temporary job, how it will impact on the increase that the public servants are hopefully expecting to cope with this high cost of living.
In addition, Adam, it is clearly a case of either incompetence or just stupidity. Here is a situation where both the president and the second vice president, they have been talking about importing labor. We're going to bring migrant labor. Now, clearly, if you're saying you're going to bring migrant labor, there must be employment for those laborers. Now, why are you going to say you bring in migrant laborers when you got about 40% unemployment in your country? It is only explainable if you put it in political terms, that the migrants they are seeking to bring are people who they hope will vote for them in an election. And so we're seeing political motives. But there is no evidence that there is a plan in terms of creating employment. And don't forget, when the PPP promised, they promised 50,000 jobs. They had no word like temporary. They have now added temporary. They promised the sugar industry will be reopened and that it was viable. Now they are closing. I saw the second vice president telling sugar workers that they must look for employment. We have to point out to people this level of dishonesty, this level of deceit. We also heard them talking about hemp and shrimp. You know, they are all over the place and manifesting their incompetence. And one would have expected in this era, we would not only have been talking about jobs, but we would have been talking about high-paying jobs. Jobs that people can get that allow them to live comfortably. We seem to be deteriorating. As we get oil resources and access to more resources, the value of the wages and salaries are on the decline because of inflation, because of poor management. So it should be evident to all that the People's Progressive Party has no clue as to what they should do to utilize oil resources in a way that allow the people of Guyana to develop. That is the crux. The reality is that revenue from oil and gas, this revenue is not meeting the people. It is staying at the top of the society. It is in the hands of the PPP, their family and friends. Corruption is the order of the day, not an attempt to organize and develop Guyana in a way that the people of Guyana will benefit.
Thank you. Any other question? Yes, this is. Could you provide the
John
name?
Ryan from the Evening News.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask the opposition leader, has there been a date set for a second consultation with the president since the first one a couple weeks back?
You know, in my opinion, if you look at the release that was made jointly between the president and the opposition leader, in that release, first of all, I was saying let us meet in 2 weeks. The president said, when I said 2 weeks, he said it is unrealistic. 2 weeks is too long. He then said, I think, we could meet, and we agreed that we can meet in 7 days. That he will provide certain information. Now, in my opinion, the president is very disrespectful. They do not honor agreements. This is an agreement that was made between the opposition and the president that we will meet in 1 week. Until now, I have not heard from the president, and I hope the president doesn't believe that when he says he wants to meet, I will disrupt my schedule of meeting the people of Ghana and doing my work just to meet with him. I want the world to know that the very first arrangement he put in writing on when we shall meet has been violated. The short answer is that I have not heard from the president, and in my opinion, they are in breach of the very agreement they made that was put in the joint press statement. And so I don't expect them to come to talk about the urgency of consulting, because we have put in place a framework for urgent consultation, and it has been violated by no other than the president himself.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. I do believe with no.
You sure?
you can. Nobody has raised their hand.
Don't worry.
Go ahead.
I can raise my mouth. I want us to, please, sir, revisit the elections registration. That's an issue that I intend to stay close to. The last time we had a press conference, I think the General Secretary talked about the scrutineers looking at what's happening. Is there still evidence of non-Guyanese being registered?
Yes.
I'm not talking about the Commonwealth citizen. No. Oh, sorry.
Yes, there is evidence. Our people are picking up, particularly in Region 1 and some other regions, that the government is illegally registering Venezuelans and other Spanish-speaking people. Some evidence has been collected. The short answer is yes. There is evidence that they are registering people who are not entitled to register. Some of them not even in the country for a year, much less 5 years. But let us recall that the government passed a law to be able to give people birth certificates without any mechanism for scrutiny and in keeping with the law. So all of these are issues that are emerging and being dealt with. But our scrutineers have been collecting the information. We have said there are areas where our scrutineers objected to people being registered. Some were not, but some are still being registered illegally.
Then, has this been brought to the attention of the Guyana Elections Commission? I know during the elections there was this promise that all the conditions, the illegal conditions that you noticed would have been dealt with by GCOM and all of this. And the final they were ignored. Are you taking these issues up with GCOM at the moment and hoping for an early resolution? rather than wait until the last minute for claims and objections?
Well, first of all, we are on record as saying that this list cannot be cleaned by claims and objections and cleaned properly. But the information is being provided to the commissioners, and I know the commissioners are active dealing with these issues at the level of the commission. Clearly, the issue here cannot be anything about claims and objection. We need to have a clean list using a number of approaches to ensure that the list bear resemblance to the reality in Guyana.
Thank you. All right. As we come to the end, any other questions? If not, I want to thank the viewing public for tuning into the press conference today and the members of the press, and we hope that you do have a reflective and enjoyable holiday celebrating independence tomorrow. And again, thank you for joining us. Do have a wonderful afternoon.